It started with a mistake. A simple accident. One wrong swipe on my phone, and my entire world began to collapse. I had been looking for a restaurant my friend recommended, scrolling through Google Maps when I accidentally tapped on the timeline feature. I never really used it, never saw the need. But today, I saw something strange, a location that wasn't mine. It was a small house on the other side of town, a place I had never been. But according to Google, my wife had again and again. My hands went cold as I scrolled through the history. She had been there at least twice a week for the last 6 months, always during the day when I was at work. At first, I told myself there had to be a reason. Maybe it was a friend's house, maybe she was helping someone. But deep down, I already knew the truth. This wasn't random. This wasn't innocent. This was betrayal. I tried to stay calm, to think rationally. But once doubt takes root, it spreads like wildfire. I started paying attention to the little things. The way she suddenly kept her phone face down. The way she took calls in the other room, whispering. The way she had started dressing differently, tighter jeans, lower tops, more perfume. The way she had stopped touching me. I needed proof. Real proof. So I did something I never thought I would do. I followed her. The next day, I pretended to leave for work but doubled back, parking down the street and waiting. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched our front door. At exactly 11:15 a.m., she walked outside. Dressed up, hair perfect, makeup flawless. She looked more put together than she had in months. Not for me. For him. She got into her car, and I followed. She drove across town, straight to the house from Google Maps. My hands clenched the steering wheel as she parked, stepped out, and walked to the door. She didn't knock. She used a key. I saw red. I gripped my phone so tight I thought it would break. I wanted to storm in, drag her out, demand answers. But I forced myself to wait. I took pictures. I recorded video. I sat there, watching my wife disappear into another man's home. And I knew in that moment our marriage was already dead. I didn't go home right away. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind racing. I felt like I was trapped in some kind of nightmare, like I had stepped into a life that wasn't mine. Everything we had built, the years, the memories, the love, meant nothing. And worst of all, she hadn't even hesitated. She had walked into that house so easily, so comfortably, like she belonged there. I barely slept that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with everything I had seen. My wife. Another man. A house she walked into like it was her own. She lay beside me, breathing steadily, as if she hadn't just spent the afternoon in another man's bed. I turned my head to look at her, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt nothing but disgust. She wasn't my wife. She was a stranger wearing my wife's face. And she had no idea that her world was about to collapse. The next morning, I acted normal. I kissed her goodbye. I asked what her plans were for the day. She smiled, kissed me back, and lied to my face. "I'm meeting Claire for lunch," she said, grabbing her bag. "We might do some shopping after." Claire. Her best friend. The same Claire who had moved to another state 6 months ago. She wasn't even trying to be careful anymore. I let her leave. And then, I followed. Again. Same routine. Same house. Same betrayal. But today, I didn't just sit there. Today, I got out of my car. I walked straight up to the house, my fist clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. I wasn't thinking anymore. I was just acting. I knocked. Once. Twice. And then the door opened. A man stood there. Late 30s, fit, confident. The kind of guy who looked like he had never had to fight for anything in his life. Smug. Comfortable. He raised an eyebrow when he saw me, his lips curling into a smirk. He knew who I was. And he wasn't afraid. I saw red. "Carlos, right?" he said, leaning against the doorframe. "She told me you were a little suspicious." She told him? I clenched my jaw. My wife had been talking about me with her lover. Laughing about me, probably. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. He shrugged. "Inside." Like it was nothing. Like it was normal to have another man's wife in his home. I pushed past him. I heard her before I saw her. Laughter. Soft, intimate. The kind of laugh she used to save for me. Then, I stepped into the living room. And there she was. Sitting on his couch, wearing one of his shirts, her legs curled up beneath her, a glass of wine in her hand. Completely comfortable. She looked up. Her face went pale. "Carlos." I didn't say a word. I just looked at her. At the woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, the woman who had spent months sneaking away to another man's house, living a second life behind my back. And then I smiled. She blinked, confused. Afraid. Enjoying your lunch with Claire? I asked, tilting my head. She swallowed hard. Carlos, please. I can explain it. I held up a hand. No. No more lies. Her lover, this stranger who had taken everything from me, crossed his arms, watching us like this was some kind of entertainment. I turned to him. How long? He smirked. Does it matter? I punched him. Hard. He stumbled back, clutching his jaw, eyes wide with shock. I turned back to my wife, breathing heavily. I had never hit a man in my life, but I had never been this angry before. She burst into tears. Carlos, please. I never wanted to hurt you. I laughed. A cold, hollow sound. But you did. Over and over again. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You could have told me. You could have left. But you chose to stay, to lie, to let me believe we were happy while you were here. I gestured around the room, my hands shaking. With him. She sobbed harder. But I didn't care. I turned on my heel and walked out. And this time, I didn't follow her. By the time I got home, something inside me had snapped. I walked straight into our bedroom, ripped open her closet, and grabbed the first thing I saw, a framed picture of us on our honeymoon. And then, I smashed it against the wall. Glass shattered. The frame broke in half. But it wasn't enough. I tore through her things, knocking over her perfumes, throwing her clothes onto the floor. I wanted to destroy everything. Because that's exactly what she had done to me. By the time she got home that night, her life was already gone. I had been preparing for this moment since the second I saw that damn house on Google Maps. Bank accounts? Drained. Car? Taken. Locks? Changed. Her credit cards? Canceled. She had nothing. She stood in the driveway, tears streaming down her face, pounding on the door. Carlos. Please. Let me in. I watched from the window, expressionless. She had walked into another man's home like it was hers. I opened the door just enough to look at her. Her makeup was ruined, her hair a mess. She looked nothing like the woman I once loved. She looked like a stranger. She choked on a sob. Where am I supposed to go? I tilted my head. Not my problem. Carlos, please. I held up my phone. One more word, and I send the pictures of you and him to everyone we know. Her face crumpled. I stepped back and shut the door. And just like that, she was gone. I sat in silence for a long time, staring at the wreckage of what my life used to be. She had been my world.